Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you with the New Warriors #3. And this was an excellent book. I like the way that the team is brought back together after the bittersweet ending of issue 2. So the villain in this book is called the Thinker. The print date on this was September 1990. And we open up in this place called Gene Tech, and there's these corporates that are just kind of talking about the New Warriors, saying, we're watching the New Warriors in action, ladies and gentlemen. They are young. They are powerful. They are usable. Now, before we get into the Thinker and what he thinks of his fellow man, excuse me, let's talk about who made this book. This is Fabian Nikizia doing psycho writing, Mark Bagley, crazed penciler, Larry Malstead doing zany inks, Michael Hessler doing the manic lettering, Andy Yakis doing the bonkers coloring, and Danny Fingeroth was the mad editor, and Tom DeFalco was the Falco was the matter editor. And again, I've said this so many times in reviews, is I wish Marvel could get back to these days when they knew how to make the readers feel like they were part of the joke. Like, you know, we would never meet these people in real life, but they made you feel like you were part of, you know, like they were fellow buddies or friends or at least acquaintances, and they're bringing you in on the joke because you care about these characters, and so the people behind it want to make you feel involved. And I don't really feel that with a lot of modern comic books anymore. And I mean, the artwork too. I mean, look at Mark Bagley and the art team. The way that here, you know, the New Warriors, you know, it lasted for what was it, 60 or 70 issues, and then it was canceled. You know, even for a book that's not many people know, it ran for a while, and it was a fun book compared to comics now, where, you know, what, a lot of books now barely make it to issue 13, and even if so, they'll rebrand it as like a mini series, and you're just like, no, we understand what's going on here. So anyway, the Thinker, there's a particular part here I wanted to point out for you guys, and I found it very poignant because this is supposed to be a science office, and the Thinker is basically saying, you know, this is supposed to be a science lab, and I'm completely surrounded by people in suits, listening to their self-satisfied chuckling. It's no wonder I usually prefer avoiding my fellow man. And you can see here, this is one of those ambiguous things where you don't know if the Thinker is good or bad. But seeing that he is in on this, he's actually taking the job for Gene Tech to analyze the New Warriors and get their power sets, you know, to observe them. You can see he's not that great of a guy. And to me, I know I in the last issue I talked about how Thrasher to me is sort of like Batman Bruce Wayne. The Thinker kind of reminds me of a more hideous looking version of Deathstroke. He may not have Slade's enhanced abilities of fighting, physique, etc., so forth, but he has Deathstroke's mind and how to hunt down people and get their, you know, and find out who they are and how to goad them, essentially. And he has a partner or a servant, whatever you want to call it. His name is Primus, and he says, you see, Primus is a creature lacking humanity, but desperately seeking to find its place among mankind. And that kind of reminds me of Data. Even though Data was not violent by nature, Primus isn't, but as you can see by his physique, he's not someone to trifle with. And if you want to read more about Primus, I'm glad that the editors put kind of where you can find out more about him. So then, because of what happened with Night Thrasher in that last issue where he wanted to essentially kill Midnight's Fire, the team is seemingly disbanded. And here, this is kind of a good way to kind of get in and start seeing every individual in their own environment. Now, what really, you know, inspired me to think that the Thinker is like Slade. If you go back and remember the Judas contract, after Terra had gotten all the information on the new Teen Titans, Slade went in and started to use their weaknesses against them. So Namorita, she's a public superhero. You know, she doesn't, her alias doesn't keep her protected like, say, Speedball or Marble Boy, etc., so forth. So she's kind of easy to pick out. And so we see how, because she's an Atlantean, how much of an excellent swimmer she is. And even the Thinker, as he observes, goes, she's in poetry and motion, a rose and a tigress combined. Pity them, what I must do. And it doesn't come out and say exactly what they do to her, but it's something in the water. As you can see, she completely just flies out in pain. And again, here's where the ambiguity of the Thinker to me comes out. He goes, it wasn't my intention to harm you, young lady. I was only trying to obtain some biochemical information on your unique physiology. And she wants to rip his head off because she's like her cousin, hot-headed. And she goes, what do you want? And he goes, on Friday at 10 p.m., go to the spot where you were forged the will to fight those who would abuse the ecosphere, and you will have the answers you seek. And I read this part because this kind of becomes a running theme on how the Thinker gets all the characters together. So Speedball, not really caring what his parents say, his parents have a lot of issues. So in the 90s, I could see why they touched on that subject, because it was becoming more, there's more of a spotlight being flashed on it compared to the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So you can start seeing broken homes and how Speedball, when he's not his hero persona, you can see how he's more of this angst youth, which was very much the time, Nirvana, Soundgarden, the grunge era. But his personality to a degree is a complete 180 when he's Speedball, because he feels like he can actually be himself. And here it is a little creepy because he goes, to be young and carefree superhero. Not a worry in the world for this spandex savior. And I'm just like, oh, just bad choice of words there. That just sounds really bad. But speaking of Speedball, if you guys haven't checked out, I think it's not an exclusive, no, but Marvel Legends is releasing a version of Speedball. So now, within the Marvel Legends realms of action figures, we're now getting Speedball. We already have Night Thrasher. I would love to see a Namorita. I may have to go back now and eat crow and buy the Firestar, because they released her and she was part of the New Mutants. Anyway, with all that said, Speedball gets caught by Primus, and Thinker essentially gives him the same spiel, saying, go where you were first forged. And I like how, even though Primus doesn't have a whole lot of words, I like how you get to see all his powers on display, like how he's able to counter each hero where they're wrapping it up, how he can be resourceful. It's just very interesting character. And here, we revisit what happened in issue 2, where he tries to connect with Silhouette again, but because of what he did to her brother publicly, and because of what happened in their past, there's a lot of brokenness between these two. And so there's this type of mugging. Night Thrasher really gets his ass kicked. And he goes, I'm gonna kill you. And you see the rage and the type of anger that he always keeps bubbling right underneath the surface. And I like how Silhouette says, you'll have to find him first. He ran away far faster than you or I could. Dwayne, must your life always revolve around violence? That's very poignant because, he's very much that type of person. And the one individual who could curb that states the obvious, even though he is very hard-headed and won't listen. So we're going to jump along. We get moments with Nova, and, not everyone's able to discern if this person in red is actually Nova. And then, of course, Starfire. That's not her name. What is it? Firestar. Firestarter. I forget. Feel free to make fun of me down in the comments. But, as you can see, all this is really leading up to bringing the team back together. Again, broken homes of the 90s. You kind of see the type of home that Marble Boy has and how his father disapproves of mutants or people with powers. He doesn't see them as people. And there's a very heartbreaking moment between him and his dad, which leads us into the crescendo of the book, where everyone finds out where they need to meet. Where do they meet? Read the book to find out. And you get to see Primus's just god-awful powers on display. Nova tries to actually punch him. And he says, bodies like razors. And Nova, one of the strongest of them, gets his ass kicked. Now, again, let's think about this. Think of how each individual character has had a moment to shine. You kind of see their strong points, their flaws, the artwork on point. And we get all of this in 1990, of course, for $1, guys. This is what I mean when I miss this era of Marvel. Because even, I didn't read all the titles, but the ones that I would pick up, the artwork was always on point. The stories, for the most part, were on point as well. You made me want to read the next issue. It was engaging. There was great human interest moments. You cared about these people. And, the way that they would use social satire, it was subtle and it worked organically into the story instead of being too much on the nose. 80s and 90s Marvel really knew how to hit that target market, and really made you want to come back for more. And the more that I read these books now, I wish that I would have got them when they first came out. But hey, better late than never, right? And there's another, again, going back to heartfelt moments, poignant moments. You see how the thinker talks about how the juxtaposition of all these suits supposed to be in a science lab, and how he talks about how he avoids his humanity. Well, there's something that you find out about the thinker when he talks to the New Mutants, and they attack him. And Primus basically says, the thinker came to do a certain thing for you, and yet you attack him. Is this what humanity is really about? Because if so, I don't want nothing to do with it. So just a lot of scenes to make you think, guys. This was an excellent book. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if you can pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed the review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you can possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little Speedball bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love chatting with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.